Might help if I unmuted myself. All right, welcome to the 2021 Nebraska State Soccer Coaching Week of Education. So excited you guys have decided to join us. The response has been overwhelming. I know some of our participants are not from the state of Nebraska. Totally fine. Love it that you guys are here. I have so much respect for any coaches that put themselves in an environment where they're looking for information that either is going to challenge them or expand their understanding of soccer and how to work with young people. And so a lot of respect for all of you that have pursued this and wanted to be a part of it. And thank you so much for doing that. But definitely would be remiss if I did not say a massive thank you to our list of presenters for this year's symposium, virtual symposium. What a great cast. Thank you. Thank you so much, every single one of you, for sharing your time and wanting to share your knowledge of this game and working with young people. Obviously, kicking off the week, Ian Barker, National Director of Coaching Education for the United Soccer Coaches, Monday at noon. What a great presentation to kind of get us going. We have 4 fantastic presenters from within the state of Nebraska, our own colleagues and peers in the ranks of coaching with some great experience, some great knowledge. The theme of this year's symposium is the game model and connecting your training sessions to your game model as a coach. But we also have some other sessions that are hitting some really, really important topics. Mitch and Monica are going to hit 2 of those topics. Mitch is a director of coaching for a club here in the state of Nebraska that did a 3-part series with their athletes in their club, specifically targeting the mental health of young athletes. And what's the coach's responsibility within taking care of their mental health in the midst of this pandemic, right? What a huge and important topic. And then Monica, who's the executive director for Football for the World, a great organization. Please check them out. But she's going to talk specifically about building confidence in our athletes. What a great topic to go into preseason for the spring, to keep on the forefront of our minds of how we engage and work with our athletes. And also, especially in this time period as well, also could be something very important to look at. Our partners, Mojo Sports, NCSA, Techni Football, 3 very good sponsors for Nebraska State Soccer who have been instrumental in helping us move the game forward in our state. And Mojo Sports is just jumping on. This is our launch week with them. We wanted to introduce them as a partner for Nebraska State Soccer here. But Vince Gansberg and John Howe, man, fantastic. Also, the CEO of Mojo Sports, Reed, jumped on with them as well to talk about how their product can be used with grassroots coaches. It's free. It's a way to add structure and progression within your coaching. So if you don't have a club curriculum, you don't have support from a club because it's recreational or whatever, this is a great resource for our coaches in the state of Nebraska. John and Yale are going to talk about 2 topics that could be very important right now with pandemic COVID, depending on where your athletes are coming in and out of lockdowns, right? But talking about pandemic proofing your recruiting for college soccer. We just found out that D1 extended the dead period again until May 31st. So how do you address that? The athletes that you're working with on your team, if they're recruitable age and they're looking to play college soccer, how do they do that? John's got some great resources, free resources for you guys as coaches in how to help them through that process. And Yale's going to talk about developing this culture of self-training, either on your team or in your club. But man, what a great topic. As you're coming in and out of lockdowns, in and out of quarantines, these athletes can take ownership of their own training. And then we got some great friends of Nebraska State Soccer and Soccer Coach or Soccer Chat podcasts, and also South Dakota Youth Soccer Association. I know you guys have probably listened to Soccer Chat podcasts, have engaged in their Wednesday night soccer chats. So we have Coach Rizzo and Coach Soderling who have jumped on, and they're going to talk about the informal pathway of coaching education. They were so creative, took it into their own hands to learn from other coaches. What a great mindset. What a great way to kind of own their own coaching development. And they're going to engage you and talk to you about that process. And then Coach Weiler from South Dakota Youth Soccer Association. He was a former pro soccer player, got into club coaching, and now is the state technical director for South Dakota Youth Soccer. Also starting to get more and more involved with U.S. Soccer Coaching Education. And he's going to just kind of jump on this theme for us of how to evaluate your training session if it was successful or not, right? And around this idea of the game models. So again, what a great week. I encourage you to join these sessions live. All of our presenters have said they would love to have you engage live because they want to answer your questions specifically related to their topic, right? They're going to be involved in the chat during the session. They're going to be involved in the Q&As at the end. So please jump in if you can live, maybe at least one a day, ask questions, help them give you the information that you're looking for. And as I said before, we're going to be sending out recordings of all these sessions, plus the notes that our presenters have shared with us about these topics so that you have them as a resource moving forward. All right. I wanted to kick us off and just talk about our theme this year, which is this idea of game models. And what is a game model, and how do you tie your training session into a game model? So what is it? How do you build it? Connecting your training session, and then this idea of tactical periodization. We're going to cover those things. First and foremost, I have to just kind of everything that I say in this presentation, anything I say in coaching education, none of it is original with me. Everything I have stolen. I've stolen ideas over the last 20 years of coaching from these have been some of my primary influences, but so many more, hundreds of conversations at coaching courses outside of the symposiums or the convention sessions overnight with a beverage, right? Or books I've read, YouTube videos that I've watched, podcasts that I've listened to, soccer chat responses to questions I've seen on Twitter, right? I am an information junkie. I love learning. I love this process. And so nothing I say today is original with me. I'm trying to give credit where credit is due. If you have questions about any of the resources I have used in my coaching pathway, please reach out. Please let me know. I'm happy to share any of those resources with you. And there's so many more that aren't on this list that if you have questions about them, I can get those to you as well. First and foremost, what is a game model, right? And I love this definition. Javier Temerit wrote this book, and I'll show it to you here on the next slide, but I love the simplified definition of what is a game model. A game model is basically you, as the coach or as the club, creating a sense of order within the team while causing disruption or disorganization in the opposition, right? So your team knows what they're doing. They're on the same page. They understand their roles and what they're trying to do to disrupt and disorganize the opposition. And so for you as the coach, and I'm not going to read the entire quote there, but I want to really highlight this key phrase here in this quote here from Javier. Clearly detailed and explained to the players, right? It is your job as a coach, when you have this idea of how the game should be played, of how the team causes disruption and disorganization in the opposition, it is your responsibility as a coach to clearly detail and explain that to your players. Just on a coaching course recently, I was talking to one of the coaches in our group, and he said there's a coach in his club that said it's not his job to make sure players understand what he's saying. It's his job to communicate the knowledge he has in his head to the players. It's their job to apply it and understand it. I can't disagree with that phrase vehemently anymore. Our job as coaches is to be teachers, right? We are to be educators of this game. We have this concept of how the game is supposed to be played in our minds. It is our job to teach that and then check for understanding to make sure that it is making an impact on the field. The biggest way you can see if you're impacting how these players play based on this model that you have in your mind is to see if you see that on the field on Saturdays and Sundays during game days, right? You have to create a sense of order that the players understand clearly that is going to cause disruption, disorganization in your opponents, right? Where do we get this game model from? Generally, there's two key ways, right? If you're a club coach within a developmental system inside of an organization that's bigger than you, and the team that you have is going to be moving through this pathway with other coaches in the club, then it should come from the top down, right? From your director or from your executive director or from the club board. They should have a philosophy, a game model that they are trying to kind of put into place as they develop players through those stages. reach out to your leadership. A lot of directors of coaching have gotten pulled to do a lot of administrative things. I know when I was a DOC, I was doing a lot more of the registration, event management, stuff like that, than I was mentoring and training coaches. So not at faults of their own with DOCs. I'm sure they would love it if you came to them and asked them, hey, what is our game model for our club? At the level, the stage with the players that I'm working with, what is my role in implementing that game model? I'm sure they would love to have that conversation with you. Then you got the other pool of coaches, right? The ones maybe that are high school coaches, college coaches, semi-pro, pro coaches. The game model is going to come from the head coach, right? How they see their experiences of the game, how they see the game should be played based on their experiences with the game, right? So again, regardless of which one your game model comes from, it is this idea of how your team will be organized and be on the same page, understanding each other's roles and responsibilities and understanding what they're trying to do, when they're trying to do it, to disorganize and disrupt what the other team's doing. Okay, so it's basically getting everybody on the same page, understanding what's going on. When I think about building a game model, for me personally, I start with the end objective and I start working backwards, right? So for me, the end objective is scoring goals. The objective of any soccer game, pickup, competitive, recreational, any game is to score goals in the game of soccer. Put this round thing in the back of that net. So we start in that goal area. And then we start working backwards. Okay, so how do I create chances so the ball goes in the back of the net? And so that's going to be kind of my attacking third or zone 14 right on top of the box, right? How do I penetrate, create options for my team? Consolidation zone. How do I get into the final third? How do I build? What's my possession for, right? Do I use possession to get into that final third? And then the defensive or build-up zone. How am I going to win the ball, or how am I going to regain possession of the ball and move into consolidation zone and then create chances in the final third? So if the objective of the game is to score goals, I'm going to work backwards from there, and then I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball, right? On how do I win possession back so that I can have the ball to score goals later. One quick note down here at the bottom. Game model is not a system, okay? It is a philosophy. It's a style that you can apply and is flexible with multiple different systems. So for instance, I'm a very big proponent of wing backs to create number advantages in the attack. And I like my wings to get forward. I like them to get involved. I like to unbalance the opposition with a wing back play. I can do that in several different systems, right? I can do it in a 3-5-2 with those outside mid wing backs getting involved. So it starts maybe with a 5-3-2 defensively and goes into a 3-5-2 in the attack. I could do it with a 4-4-2, a back four with a box midfield or a diamond midfield where the outside mids are pinched in and the wing backs are getting involved, causing width in the attack, right? I could do it in a 4-3-3 with my wing backs getting involved, causing a numbers up situation with the wing forwards in the final third. So again, my philosophy would be creating numbers up advantages using wing back play. And it's flexible throughout several different systems, depending on the opposition I play, depending on the qualities of the players that I have on my team this year, those types of things. So I just want to make sure that we clarify, game model is not a system or a numbering system, right? Game model is how you see the game to be played, and it's flexible within different numbering systems. How do we build a game model? And again, if you're a club coach within a club philosophy, talk to your directors, right? And it might be a different philosophy between the boys and the girls. It might be a different philosophy, different focuses for the younger academy ages. So talk to your directors, find out what their game model is. But again, for those of you who just want to understand how this is usually done or how to do it yourself for a high school or college team, I start with the objective of the game, score goals. Okay. And then I work backwards. So if the objective of the game is put the ball in the back of the net, this is how I'm going to do it. How am I going to score goals, right? Do I want to use negative pass from the end line? Do I want to use an early cross? Do I want to use combination play to get in behind, right? So how am I going to create chances in the final third, right? So I've talked about this is how the goal is going to be scored. How do I create those chances? And this is where the attacking principles of play. So I'm stealing this term, from other people for sure. It was a big part of my coaching education coming up. Right now, United Soccer coaches, you can find them using the attacking and defending principles of play in their coaching diploma courses. But how do I find the elements, the principles of attack in my game model? Where does my width come from? Where does my penetration come from? If we can't go forward, where's my support, right? Where is my mobility to unbalance opposition? We just talked about, I like using wing backs as that wide play to unbalance and find number up advantages. So where am I finding these principles play? How am I using that in my game model, right? And so that is going to be kind of, your building phase, getting into the final third, creating those chances to score goals, and working back from that. Okay, so how do I transition if I don't have the ball into having the ball? Where is that in my game model? How do we transition from not having the ball to having the ball? What are we looking for immediately, right? And so you got to talk about those transitional moments. Games are won and lost at the highest levels in those transitional moments, right? And I think that, the stats kind of go back and forth, but 60 to 65% of goals scored in games is in transitional moments with 3 passes or less, right? So transition's such an important part of the game. You got to include that in your game model. So continuing to work back. So we just talked about that transitional moment when I didn't have the ball to now I do have the ball. So what's before that? I don't have the ball. Okay. If the objective of a soccer game, in my mind, if the objective of a soccer game is to win the ball back, then the objective of defending is if the objective of a soccer game is to put the ball in the back of the net, then the objective of defending is to get the ball back so I can score goals, put it in the back of the net, right? Part of that is going to be if you're working as a team to win the ball back, you're also denying goal scoring chances by the other team, right? But again, if the objective of a game is put the ball in the back of the net, everything I do should be around that objective, achieving that objective. And defense is the same thing. Defending is going to be, the objective is to put the ball in the back of the net. So defending then, therefore, to help achieve that objective is to get it back so that we can score goals, right? So how are we going to win the ball back? Do your teams know how to win the ball back? Or where or when do you want to win it back, right? Is it high up the field? Is it midfield delayed pressure? Or is it a low block, right? How are you going to win it back? Can't tell you how many great, really good pressure cover balance sessions I've seen over and over again at coaching courses. And coaches fail to talk about, here's where we win the ball. Here's the visual cue you're looking for to win the ball. Here's who I want involved in winning the ball. Is it the person putting pressure on the ball? Is it the person providing cover to pick off and intercept the pass? Where and how and when are you going to win that ball back, right? And it may not be immediately, right? It might be a low block, taking your time, waiting for that moment. But still, you got to talk about, when do you want to win the ball back and how are you going to do that? Are you going to push it central? Are you going to push it wide? Are you going to double team the ball? So all those things. How are you going to win that ball back? What's your game model? What's your philosophy defensively to get the ball back so you can score goals? How are you going to prevent goals? That system, that shape, it's going to be related, but that's where we're talking about the defensive principles of play, right? And again, you can find these the United Soccer Coaches coaching diplomas right now. They were a big part of my coaching education as I was coming up. And so where do you have pressure? Who puts pressure? Where does my cover come from? What does my balance look like? How do we keep the field compact and showing control and restraint in our defending? What does that look like, right? And it might look different if you're a high press team compared to a low block team. But still, whatever your philosophy is, you got to talk about that, right? And then working backwards, how do I transition from having the ball to not having the ball? What does that transitional phase look like? Because if 60 to 65% of goals are scored in transitional moments, the team that is losing possession of the ball is getting beat in 3 passes or less to give up a goal, right? All right, so this idea of roadmaps, and I'm very embarrassed to say, I know I've seen different philosophies and different methods of watching and analyzing games. My A license, we talked about different ways of analyzing the game, but it wasn't until I was at a U.S. National Instructors Workshop and I first saw this idea and this concept of a roadmap. And it might be the first time I realized it. I don't know. I'm sure I saw things similar to this, but it really dawned on me at that workshop. At first, I was extremely confused looking at this document. and this isn't the exact document that I looked at. I've made one for myself as a director in coaching for clubs and things like that. I've put together ones based on our club game model, specific to our system, how we want players developed, put one together for our specific situations. But it works from left to right. And for me, the first 3 columns are non-negotiables. I don't mess with them. And so regardless of how you see the game being played, your game model, the first 3 columns in attack and in defending are non-negotiable. For me personally, I share these roadmaps with my players and the teams that I coach. And so I've kept it to just 2 moments, the attacking and the defending. And I've included the transitional moments of the game within these 2 roadmaps. I just didn't want to overcomplicate it. When you take the B and the A license, US Soccer has a transition from defense to attack and attack to defending. They have 2 additional roadmaps for those specific moments, right? So again, how you want to use this concept, it's just a way to teach and communicate your game model to your players or to the coaches in your club or to your assistant coaches on your team. As a head coach for a high school team, maybe you're sharing this with the freshman and the JV coach, whatever it is, it gets everybody on the same page. So we work left to right. Where on the field are we talking about? And the objective of your team based on what third of the field they're in. So in the build-up or defensive third zone, if I'm in the attack, I have possession of the ball. The objective is to get the ball into the final third, to build up the field, to get into the final third so we can score goals, right? The objective of the game is scoring goals. So everything else I do should revolve around that objective of scoring goals. How do we go about doing that? We use the principles of play, right? And again, they were such a big part of my coaching education. I think they are absolutely mandatory in my tenets with my team, that they understand here's where we find penetration. Here's where we get width to pull the other team apart and open gaps. Here's where we have depth and support when we can't go forward. Here's where we find mobility and unbalance the opposition. And then you got to have that creativity, improvisation, right? Who are those players? They're going to catch their team off guard. What can your team do to catch their team a little bit unaware and catch them a little bit disorganized and create chances for you to score goals? After the first 3 columns, so the last 2 columns, this is where your game model, how do you achieve those things in the first 3 columns? This is where we start to see some individualism and some uniqueness between how coaches see or what they think the game, how they view the game and how it should be played, right? Lots of different philosophies out there. You could be pragmatic. You could be very romantic about it, right? And so however you think the game should be played, your influences, your experiences, your club, your leadership is going to help paint this idea of what the game looks like for you and how you think players can be successful in the game. So how do I achieve my principles and how do I achieve my objectives within the thirds of the field? These are my tenets. These are my tactical team philosophy tenets, right? And ultimately, the qualities of the players, how well can they achieve those tactical team philosophies, right? Do they have the necessary tools? Do they have the technical ability? Do they have the focus? Do they have the ability to understand and read and analyze the situations of the game? Do they have the physical ability to stay in a game for 90 minutes if it's at the highest levels, right? 90 minutes. So again, you have these player qualities, proficiencies to achieve the tactical team philosophies that kind of help us achieve the principles of play in the attack or in the defense to reach our goals, right? Ultimately, the ultimate goal, the ultimate objective of the game, scoring a goal. All right. Defensive, same thing, right? And again, I have a transition included in as one of the principles of play, trying to simplify this for the teams that I coach. But same 3 zones, a different objective within each of those zones. The same objective, though, throughout is to recover the ball. And can we disrupt what the other team's doing? The principles that we have to address within our game model. How do we find pressure? Who's providing cover? Where does our balance come from? How do we keep the field compact? Where on the field are we trying to keep it compact? And what kind of control and restraint do our players need to show? And it looks different depending on how you want to play. But all these things must be addressed in your game model. And then we have the specific tactical team philosophies based on how you see the game being played. And again, player proficiencies. They need to have these proficiencies to achieve those tactical team philosophies and seeing the game come to fruition, right? So if it's a breakdown in individual players, you need to know that, and you need to work with those players on those breakdowns. If it's a general thing for the age group, depending on where they're at as an age group, you need to work on those things. All right, so let's talk about then tying your training session into this game model that is either been given to you or that you've created. So for me, the objective of my training session is based on the third of the field, the function, and the objective that my team is working on, right? So again, if I go here to the example of the training session I have in this later on in this, we're in the build-up zone. We're in the defensive third. The objective or the goal for us in the defensive third is possession to play forward and break lines so that we can create chances in the final third, right? So my third of the field, defensive third, build-up zone. My function, we have possession, so we're in the attacking function. And the objective is to move the ball forward by breaking lines, okay? So that we can score goals and create chances in the final third. So then I use my 5 W's. And again, all this I've stolen from coaching education that I was a part of, that I've taught. And I love this concept of identifying these 5 W's as you're putting your training sessions together. So where are you on the field? We've already identified that in the objective. What are you trying to train? And so in the session that I have, as an example in this presentation, it's building out of the defensive third, trying to break into that middle third so we can create chances later on. When in the moment are we trying to train? What is the moment, right? So it's when we regain possession, and now we're trying to build out of our defensive third. Who are the key players involved? I've identified the goalkeeper, the back line, and my 6. I like triangulation, so the goalkeeper and the 6 are very important to creating those triangles around the ball. We talked about support. My support is in my triangles, okay? And then why are we working on this? What's the breakdown, maybe? What is the deficiency that my team? So again, this is kind of where we're getting into those the 4th and 5th columns, right? So we're looking at, maybe it's an understanding of the team philosophy. Maybe we don't understand the tactical philosophy that we're trying to implement. Maybe it's specific player qualities that we're lacking in proficiency. Maybe it's technical, maybe it's focus, maybe it's understanding the visual cues from the opposition to make the right decisions, okay? So I need to identify what those things are so I can work on those things in practice. And that's why I'm working on these specific things. So a lot of my coaching points are going to come from my why. So here's an example of a training session that I've used multiple times, put it together for this as well. But so building out of the defensive third. So my function is I'm in the attack. I have possession of the ball. I'm in the defensive third. The players that I'm working with are the goalkeeper, my back 4, and my 6. I currently am coaching a U14 girls team. Kind of gives you some perspective. I build my training sessions the same way that I build my game model, from the end objective backwards. So what do I want this to look like in a game? So I'm starting with that game model, with that philosophy, right? And this kind of starts leading into tactical periodization. The tactical elements of my game model are what I'm starting with. What does it look like in a game? Building out of the back, right? And so that's my what. I'm initiating the attack from the defensive third, breaking opponent pressure, right? Breaking lines. When is this happening? After we've secured possession of the ball. Who's involved? And again, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? We need to create width. Maybe we're too narrow and it's too easy to have the other team pick the ball off. We're losing possession in our third of the field. Maybe we're not creating penetrating options to get out of our third of the field. Or maybe we're not providing support when there's nowhere to go. We need to be able to come back and find another way to get out. So again, maybe those are my coaching points. And maybe it's player proficiencies, the key qualities. Maybe I need to look at the technical aspects. Maybe they're not receiving the ball on the half turn or on the correct foot. Maybe it's the quality of the passes. Maybe they're not scanning the field as the ball's coming into their foot, right? So again, as a coach, I need to analyze my team and find out where my proficiencies are or lack of proficiencies are so that I work on those things in this training session. So I have the idea, I have the picture of what it looks like in my head in that final activity, the game, working back, trying to get out of our third into the middle third. So I'm using half of a field with these 3 gates because I like to attack wide or central. Again, those triangles. So if a wide player has the ball, can they build and combine with a central player? If the central players have the ball, can they build with the wide players and get up the field? So I have those 3 options to get out of our third of the field. And then the developmental activity, taking it back even a step further, just moving to the ball. Maybe this is where I work on my technique. Maybe I work on scanning the field, recognizing where pressure is, where it's coming from, where's the opportunity to go forward and break lines. And then my warm up or activation activity, probably very technical, working on what are the technical elements I need to have to be successful at getting out of our defensive third. If you have questions about any of these things, I'm going to drop I know I'm really trying to get through this and be cognizant of your time. I know you want to get to the rest of the presentations this week, but I wanted to lay the groundwork of this idea of game models and connecting our training session to the game models as we hear from all of our great presenters this week. Last thing, tactical periodization. It was first introduced by Victor Frey from Porto University. Jose Mourinho was one of the first and most prominent coaches really to have said to have adopted this and to use it in his training methodology. And what is it really? Look, you can see the definition there. This book was just written recently in 2018, kind of going back to what is tactical periodization and how Jose Mourinho used it. But tactical periodization is that all training in your cycle throughout the year is driven tactically, right? You have this game model, and every training session you have is trying to achieve this game model. Now, it's different elements within that game model, right? The defending in the different thirds of the field with the different goals within those thirds of the field, right? But every session is driven by the tactical game model, and then you implement all the other aspects of the soccer player inside that training session around the tactical game model. So, if the topic is building out, then I'm looking at how do I develop technical, physical, and psychosocial pillars of my players within this training session that's focused on building out of the back third, right? So again, it's a great concept. And honestly, I see it kind of playing out two different ways, depending on the type of team that you're coaching. At a competitive level, so again, high school, college, semi-pro, pro. So this is a USL 2 program I had the privilege of being a technical director for a brief time. In a program like this, man, the season's fast and furious. So the first couple of weeks, we're trying to introduce the ideas of this game model of how we want to see the team play. Nobody has really been a part of the team. There might be a few guys that have been a part of the team in the past that can bring that back into the season. But we're trying to paint this picture. So preseason is a quick 2 weeks of painting the picture of this game model very quickly. And I like to, again, kind of start and layer those things. So I start from the point where we win possession back. So how are we going to win possession back? Where on the field are we going to win possession? So honestly, my philosophy in laying this out to the team is we really can't talk about how we're going to score and how we're going to build until we've talked about here's how we're going to get the ball back. So we start with getting the ball back in small groups and then kind of build towards how we get the ball back as a team. And then, so once we've won the ball back, transitioning into the attack. So we cover that in a couple of sessions. Then I like to play a scrimmage and kind of see how are we doing at understanding those concepts. Remember, the games are the evaluation periods for us as coaches on how we've done in communicating these game models to our players. Then we go back to the training field. Now we've worked on winning the ball back, transitioning into the attack. Are we doing a good job creating chances? How do we want to create chances? How do we get from the middle consolidation zone into that attacking third, that zone 14, using our game model, right? And then finishing our chances off. And then again, hopefully playing another scrimmage, evaluating how we've done and communicating those thoughts. But in a competitive level, you're really trying to get results, and the games come fast and furious. You're recovering from a game, you're prepping for a game. There's not a lot of time to be developing the fundamental. And plus two, you're probably working with players who have a lot of the fundamental elements you need, and you've brought them into that team for a reason. And so the season kind of becomes tactical adjustments, small things you're doing within the game model to either improve things that you've seen as breaking down in games, or to work on things that you think your game model is going to do to disrupt and disorganize the opposition coming up in the next game. And so you watch some film on that, you really focus on that in training. But again, all your training sessions revolve around this tactical element of your game model, and then you incorporate the other three pillars within that concept of the tactical periodization. And developmental level, it looks a little bit different. I'm not going to dive into this. I know Coach Barker is going to do a really good job. He's going to talk about some of these things as well, specifically at the club level, how your game model impacts the development of your players and where it falls into line. But the biggest thing is, for me, As a club, you should have the elements of your game model broken down into the elemental layers based on how players are developing, right? It makes no sense to work on the high level tactical elements of your game model with U4 and U6 players. Hard 6 weeks of my 20 years of coaching was coaching my son's under-4 Bumblebees team, right? He's pictured right there. Coaching that team, hardest 6 weeks of my entire coaching career, getting them organized and getting them focused. And we didn't even play like game necessarily. It was just game activities, but even getting them from point A to point B, from station 1 to station 2 with their soccer ball and their water bottle was a challenge, right? Those players can't understand some of the things as far as maybe third man runs, stuff like that. There's no way. Developmentally, they're not at that level, right? So what are the foundational things, the fundamental things that you can do and teach with these players that relate to your game model later on, right? That they would need these fundamental things. So maybe it's more of a pyramid. The fundamental things are here down at the bottom that are worked on as those younger ages, and then each layer can be built because they have that foundation. If they're missing one of those steps, you got to take them back to that and develop that within them, and then they can keep building on it, right? So again, I don't want to dive too much into this, but your game model should be incorporated in every single age appropriate training objective. And again, it's still tactical periodization. It's just over a longer period of time from age U4 to U19, as opposed to maybe in that competitive level, it's the season, right? And so you're kind of looking at it. And maybe in college and high school, maybe it's like a 4-year plan, because you have these players for 4 years. So your tactical periodization's over a 4-year plan. At the pro level, it's probably just 1 season. But at a club level, it could be from U4 to U19. And each year layers a different piece of that into it. Thank you so much again for being here. Thank you so much again to our presenters and for everything that they're doing. Again, sharing their time, sharing their knowledge with us. Please engage, please dive in. If you have questions about this idea of game models, tactical periodization, tying your training sessions into game models, please reach out to me. That is my email. That is my Twitter handle. If you are enjoying some of the sessions, would love it if you would share that on social media, share and tag our presenters, tag Nebraska State Soccer, please tag me. Would love to see some of what you're getting out of this. I'm going to be sending a follow-up a survey just after this week gets over, along with the recorded content and the notes that our presenters are sending out. Please, if you would, fill that out. That helps us out. We might do a virtual type thing in the future. We might go back to our in-person symposium. We'd just love your feedback. What did you like? What could be better? Your feedback would be very valuable to us. Enjoy our coaching week of education. Enjoy what Nebraska State Soccer has to offer. Enjoy what our presenters have to offer this week. I hope you can join us live and get specific answers to the questions that you have around this topic. If not, please reach out to us individually. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a member of Nebraska State Soccer this week in this symposium.